When the police arrived on the scene, they could smell the stench of rotting flesh from nearly a mile away. Sections of spine strung together with twine dangled from the rafters. Hundreds of human bones were scattered on the floor as if in some sort of ordering system. No, this isn't a scene of a mass murder or a serial killer's den, but rather a bone factory in rural India. Factories like this process human remains to supply the world with medical-grade skeletons for study, display, and, in some cases, to become props in movies. This human bone market exists on the fringes of society, dancing on the line of legality. Join us as we explore the history of the human bone trade and understand how it functions today. That's what you're in for on Impolite Society.
Oh, I just detest rude, unladylike young ladies.
I hope you don't mind me being a tad rude.
I myself am strange and unusual.
Don't be rude.
That is some weird, wild stuff.
Shocking, isn't it?
It's a scandal!
But it's provocative.
Please stop making me blush.
Hey, Laura.
Yeah.
Are you familiar? Very natural. Are you familiar with the movie Poltergeist?
I've seen it. Yeah.
Well, I have a little Halloween trivia fun fact for you about the movie. Do you remember the scene where the main actress, I think she's like the mom or something, falls into this unfinished swimming pool?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a really long time since I've seen this movie, but I do remember somebody running, screaming, panicked, kind of falling into this giant cesspit, and then these skeletons popping out like left and right. And it's like, are they bobbing up naturally, or are they coming to grab her and pull her down? It's a very impactful scene. It's not one you easily forget.
I have something that I think will make it little more impactful. Did you know that the skeletons that they used in that scene weren't prop skeletons at all, but actually real skeletons from real people?
I mean, I feel like it layers an added creepiness to the movie, so I'm down with it. Because I mean, you think of prop skeletons, I think of the ones that I see at Spirit Halloween, which aren't fooling anybody. So I mean, that's pretty cool. I guess
it turns out it's cheaper and more effective to get the real deal than to create accurate props. And if you're hearing the words cheaper and more effective, you are listening to Impolite Society. I am Rachel.
And I am Laura. Full skeleton attached.
Not a single splinter in these bones. I would fetch top market rate.
I don't know. I've got kind of a fucked up elbow. I did land hard on some linoleum and concrete, and it's still tweaking me. But you know what? I feel like this is still top dollar skeleton. I'm a Midwestern. I drank milk growing up. Strong bones.
Every night with dinner.
Yeah, as a kid. So weird, right?
But all this is to say, skeletons. Real skeletons in a movie. I was surprised to find out that factoid. So how did those skeletons come to be cast in this movie? And this was a question I had since I learned that little fun factoid, probably on like TikTok or some shit like that, Reddit. I don't know. Somewhere late at night when I should have been asleep, I learned that. And I was like, what? And this led me down a rabbit hole of body snatchers, grave robbers, murder syndicates, and international smuggling. That is the human bone trade. So, to begin my journey, I started with the source itself, and I looked up the special effects makeup artist from Poltergeist, whose name is Craig Reardonwho, which that doesn't sound like a real name, but Reardonwho off a website, so it must be real. And so when he was subpoenaed to explain what was going on, granted, not related to the human bones.
Subpoenaed?
Unrelated. He was brought in to give testimony because there was like some intellectual property lawsuit about Poltergeist
Got it.
itself.
Okay.
Somebody thinks Steven Spielberg ripped off somebody. I don't remember the details. I was focused on the bones, as always. Always focus on the bones. So he would to talk under oath about where they got the bones. And he said that these weren't just like pulled from the earth. These were actually treated, dressed up, biological surgical skeletons. Now, Laura, have you ever heard of something like that?
Yeah, I definitely seen surgical skeletons. In anatomy class when I was going to school for mortuary science, they had skeletons in the classroom, but honestly, I had assumed that they were replicas, but now I'm not so sure.
Laura, that 100% that was probably a real human that was hanging in your anatomy classes.
Well, I'll take that a step further because I have what I thought was a replica of a human spine and pelvis in my own house.
Oh, no, that's probably real. Where did you get that shit?
Yeah. Austin got it super fucking cheap because a friend of his was studying chiropractic or something and got one and then wanted to get rid of it and sold it to him for like $40. And I was like, shit, this is a lot of fucking money. But it's downstairs. It's hanging
$40?
in our basement. Yeah. I'll take a picture of it. Maybe I'll post it on our socials.
That's probably real. He probably had to try and get rid of it because it's haunted as shit. But, welcome to take that energy into your life. But there's a lot of this out there because when we think of like a medical classroom or even just like, I think it was in the freaking Magic School Bus, a classroom, we think of a skeleton hanging on a little arm, right? That's standard. But where did all of these skeletons come from? So I decided to dig into the history of these educational bones. And a lot of the history research came from a book called The Red Market by Scott Carney, who also reported on that scene that the Indian police found that we mentioned in the opener. And like he literally wrote the book on it. And it's not just about bones. It's about all forms of parts of humans that we buy up to full living humans. And it just is, it's kind of a tough read. But anyways, we're talking about bones. And if we're going to talk about bones, we're going to begin in the history of the human bone trade, which goes back to Georgian England, which is the 1700s for those who aren't up and up on their kings of England.
I've got my tea. I'm ready to hear.
Well, hello there, old chap, old chum, old mate of mine. I am going to be studying the old medicine practice, and to do that, I need a human skeleton. And that is not just a very great impression of 1700s English, but it's actually true because it turns out if you want doctors to be good at their jobs, they need to understand how the body works. And that knowledge doesn't just come from reading textbooks. You actually have to learn about the body and see it and understand it. And to get that knowledge, guess what you need? Bodies, apparently. So where does a poor medical student go to find bodies to learn on? I mean, and this isn't medieval England, right? There's not just bodies laying in the streets anymore.
I know this because I've read about this. It's all about grave robbing. It was pretty common in this era, and I think even a little bit before, honestly. Even like old like Greek philosophers had to steal bodies. Artists used to take bodies and dissect them in order to see how the underlying structures lay so they could draw them and sculpt them so beautifully. Yeah. So grave robbing is a long tradition amongst the educated, really all throughout the world. I think that funerals used to see people at these times kind of fighting off medical students trying to steal people's corpses the day after they were buried because they wanted them fresh, because they didn't want people who had been in the ground for a week. Oh, no. I want the ones that were just buried so I can still see the juicy inside.
Exactly. And I think we might have even learned about that on the same Dublin tour 5 years apart. Because I remember stopping by the graveyard and hearing about it from our dear friend and
David?
Shared romantic shared romantic desire, interest. James was his name.
James. Of course
God
it was
bless
James.
He's still out there with a yellow umbrella giving tours to this
I bet
day.
he is. I hope he's banging so many tourists.
He's
Shout out to
probably-
whatever episode that is that we talked about him.
Oh my God, that's
That
not
was
even
an old
out
Big
there.
Talk
Yeah, that's a
episode.
Big Talk
Yeah.
episode. It's not even in the internet anymore. But if you ever go to Dublin and you do a yellow umbrella tour and your tour guide is James, let us know. We're starting a fan club. And eventually we're going to try to reach out to him. Anyways, so people were robbing graves, right? That was a very common occurrence. And that was until England's Anatomy Act of 1832, which outlawed this body snatching. But how do you satiate these aggressive medical students who hunger to get their hands on body parts? Well, you do that by allowing doctors to help themselves to the corpses of vagrants, drunkards, and the lonely souls who went unclaimed in England's morgues and hospitals.
And I also think that prior to even this act, executed prisoners were often fodder. Like, give these to the doctors. They don't have rights. We convicted them. We fucking chopped off their head or hung them.
Yeah.
Give them to the doctors. Let them do something productive with this person.
At the risk of hitting the bummer index up too far a notch, I will say that a lot of the skeletons that were in these medical settings and these educational settings were said to be executed black criminals, which wasn't even the
That is
case.
pretty high on the bummer index.
Yeah, I mean, but there wasn't. I mean, wow, America's racist history, there were probably a lot more of those people than there should have been. There was not nearly enough to supply the market. So that's just, you really can't get into this without untangling or running or bumping into the really, what do they call it? Medical racism,
Uncomfortable truths.
scientific racism, just all around racism that
Yeah.
plagues Western society. So we're gonna turn.
It was grandfathered in by England. It's fine. No, it's not fine.
Yeah. But we're gonna try to turn that bummer index down a bit. I mean, also that Anatomy Act was based on a murder ring because people were starting to murder people for the bones. Let's just get all the bummer out.
Shit.
Let's get it out. Throw it out there. But once they had access to all these undesirables who nobody loved and cared about in the world, just bummer index. Grave robbing became a lot less lucrative, right? Why risk your life and limb to steal a body when you could just get one for free? But medicine didn't end there. The whole medical science, doctoring thing really caught on because who would have...
Weird.
Yeah, who would have suspected that people don't want to die?
What?
They like solid scientific medical treatment. Who knew? But with more demand and advancement in the medical sciences field, new medical schools were popping up all throughout the Western world, meaning there was lots of new doctors to educate. Plus, add in the fact that medicine was evolving and we were understanding a whole lot more about the human body. So getting hands on skeletons became super important again. It's a market. It's all about supply and demand. So when you look at this, there was also a fair amount of cool factor going on because who are doctors in society? They're kind of a higher social standing. Rich, trusted, respected. So having something that relates you to the medical field became like a status symbol. So like if you were a reputable doctor, you needed a skeleton hanging in your office.
Oh, yeah. I could definitely see that as a status symbol.
Yeah, I don't want to go to a doctor who doesn't know what bone is connected to the knee bone.
And I know they know because they've got a skeleton hanging in their office.
They have a poor person ready, poor executed criminal that they've...
hanging on a hook in the corner. Ugh.
Welcome to the weird, grimy world of being a human. Well, anyways, this explosion of scientific discovery and knowledge and education outpaced the supply of unclaimed bodies. So they had to turn to the old standby for important things that they want but didn't have on that sad, cloudy island. That's right, they turned to their colonies.
Give me them spices. Give me them bones.
Oh, that could be like the lyrics to a folk song.
Ooh, I'm going to write it.
Well, when the dust spices settled, India was the winner and the go-to source for human bones. And
spices.
And spices. And tea. Good for India. They really maxed out their exports. When
I shouldn't laugh, but come on. That was a good joke. Sorry.
Thank you. I always try to make good jokes. At its peak, there were 13 major medical supply companies that were mostly serving the U.S. in the 19th and 20th centuries that dealt in this export of human bones. These companies supplied schools, doctor's office, and the odd secret society like the Freemasons with genuine human bones.
Do Freemasons like bones? Do they want bones? Is that a thing?
It was in my research. I don't know what they did with it. It's secret. It's a secret society.
Well, makes it creepy. Maybe that's a future episode.
We'll
what the fuck are the Freemasons? And what do they do with bones?
I don't know. We'll have to ask Nicolas Cage. And this trading of bones was big business. And it lasted well into the 20th century. Because in 1985, when Laura was alive, the Chicago Tribune reported that more than 60,000 skulls and skeletons were exported from India into the Western world, which was enough to provide every medical student there with their own personal person.
Wow. That's a ton. I was 1 year old and there's all these fucking skulls going around.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's what your parents got for your baby shower. It's just bones.
Congratulations! Here's a human skeleton from India. You know I'd be into that. Somebody should have given me that for my bridal shower or baby shower.
You know what makes a really good teether? The tibula of an Indian man.
I would think a rib bone. Just like kind of small.
It's too pointy. It would stab him.
No.
Those gums are sensitive.
Right. It's true.
So what does all this equate to? Well, Calcutta's bone factories alone took in an estimated of $1 million a year. And that is saying something because the exchange rate is not very strong for the rupee. I did crunch the numbers, and that $1 million in today's money and in rupees represents 237,458,140 rupees.
That sounds like a fuck ton.
So when there's money to be made, everybody wants it. And that is, of course, including criminal elements and some other unsavory characters who tried to get their slice of the pie. And in, as one might assume, less than legal ways. So all of this bone shipping around accumulated, I'm thinking in India, cumin, culminated in 1985 when a man was caught trying to smuggle 1,500 skeletons of children out of India.
Yee.
Children's skeletons were a hot commodity because they were rarer and showed the different stages of development for osteology. And in fact, they were such a cash cow that many believe that these 1,500 children may not have all died naturally, to say the least.
Oh, I was going to say, where the fuck did they get all these fucking bones?
Well, if you want more and there's not enough, luckily they're out there. They're just walking around inside living children. And while it's not proven that children were kidnapped and murdered during this time, the aftermath did lead to real proven deaths, with a witch hunt sweeping the countryside, looking for this network of individuals who were believed to be abducting and killing children for their bones. And this resulted in the murder of an Australian tourist and the severe beating of a Japanese tourist because they were suspected to be a part of this ring.
That's a rough one. Talk about bummer index. Jesus Christ. Murdered children. That's like top of the bummer index.
But I mean, how many people are there in India? I feel like you would notice if children, 1,500 children were missing. Like, I think that somebody would catch on to that. But this is enough to pique interest because of this,
for sure,
they put in a ban against exporting human remains. And after that, Western countries, they still need them bones. They need to get a taste of that bone dust. So they had to turn to other places where human rights weren't very important. And when you think of those places, what are two areas of the world that come to mind?
Definitely China.
Yes. Ding, ding, ding.
not India. If they've
We've already
scratched that one off
exhausted that one.
we've exhausted that market. Somewhere kind of in between Russia and Europe. So what is that? That kind of confusing block that's all full of a bunch of countries that used to belong to Russia's and then all squiggled around.
Exactly. So China and Eastern Europe tried to fill the void in the market.
Ah.
But these regions produced relatively few skeletons, and they were not making as high of quality. India had centuries of experience making these medical grade specimens, and so the products from these areas were regarded as inferior. So, do you think that this killed the bone trade in India?
No.
No, because where there's a dollar, there's a way. So many have admitted that the bone trade never really died in India or really slowed down that much, because much of it is happening, and I mean, not even subtly to this day, leading to that raid that we talked about in the intro. So, what does the human bone market look like today? Well, it is pretty different than the old school days where literally you had a catalog of bones that you could look through and buy.
Yes, I would take the 12-year-old boy from Western India. I'll take the skull. And yes, I would like the right foot of a middle-aged, semi-well-fed woman from Central India.
Yes. So
Do they come like Cabbage Patch Kids with names?
actually,
That's
they
so
really
mean. I'm awful.
No, they probably should, because that would make people realize that they're real people and not just bones.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, they don't. So they get relegated to the world of being objects. And where do you go when you would like to buy an object?
Amazon.
Yes, you go online, because in the past, the bone trade was happening in the underground. And luckily for bone people who like bones, it's a lot easier to find that underground when you have Google machine. But I will say that if you do want to buy human bones, you have to do some surfing to find them, because many of our traditional sources, like Amazon, right? and Facebook and Etsy and eBay, they all claim to ban the buying and selling of human bones. But apparently the rule's not always very strongly enforced. You could probably find some bones out there. But
I think, again, a lot of people think that they're fake and they're not.
well, nobody wants to believe that was really inside a human.
Yeah.
So if you do want to buy bones that you know are bones and not that you're confused about, you have to go to the source. And one that I saw mentioned a lot is the bone room, which is not a sexy bone room, just a bone room full of bones. And according to
legit bones.
Yep, just good old dead people, which I guess floats some people's boats.
Float some people's bones.
Not mine. Okay, so the Bone Room has been in business for more than 30 years and has several locations in New York City, the greatest city in the world for all your bone needs. Before launching their flagship website in the 1990s, they were very proud of the fact that they had a website in the 90s, because people just...
I would imagine. That's ahead of the curve.
People just got to get their hands on them bones. They just want them so bad. Another is a website that's called Skulls Unlimited, which also has a brick and mortar in LA. And it bills itself as a museum, like maybe an oddity shop, like a lot of these places do. But they say that buying the bones keeps the museum open and free to the public. But it's a store.
Yeah, pocketing a lot of cash.
Yeah, it's a store. Anyways, and they date back a few decades as well before opening their website. So there's like a few of these kind of niche businesses in major cities that are selling human bones. But that all seems like small potatoes compared to the vast bone empires of the past. So I was curious, where do like the top biological surgical skeleton companies, who are they today? Where are all these hospitals and these medical schools getting their bones?
That's exactly what I thought. Well, I don't think that doctor from John Hopkins is going to theboneroom.com to buy his bones. Where is he going?
There's no giant syndicates anymore. I think a lot of this is happening in the private space, where private sellers are selling to private sellers. And this kind of business, it's all about who you know, right? So you're going to reach out to an individual, and they might actually be going through some of these businesses like the Bone Room.
To acquire it, and then they back end sell it. So it's like third party selling.
It's like artwork, right? You have to know somebody who knows somebody, and then you can make the deal. But how do you get connected to these people? Well, one guy caught the internet's attention not too long ago and brought the human bone trade into the public eye. Enter John Ferry, a.k.a. John's Bones. Which, missing opportunity. Just slap a fucking E in there. Every time I see
Jones's Boneses?
No, I just say it was Jones Bones. That's all I want to see. Jones Bones.
I like Jones's Boneses better.
Joneses, Boneses, Hobbitses. My precious.
I have been watching a lot of Lord of the Rings lately. I think that's probably where that came from.
It's
Jones's Boneses.
Jones's Boneses. I mean, truly, come on. That's like I saw a meme online. I know Laura likes to hear about memes people have seen online. That it was a store. It was called Michael's Bicycles. So close. Just call it Bicycles Bicycles or Mike's Bikes. Come on, John. Jones Bones.
That's cute. I like it.
Just so close. Anyways, John Jones. John. Forever known as
John's Bones.
John's Bones. Yes. John's Bonds. Sorry. I'm sitting
John's
way
Bonds
too much.
Jovi. I'm sorry now. John's Bonds Jovies. John's Bones' Jovies. Okay, go ahead.
Oh,
Sorry.
Man. Well, this little fella, this little fairy fella, he got his start in the industry as a teenager somehow. I don't know how one does that. Something about handing out cards in Times Square. Anywho,
weird.
He did this because he fell in love with bones and skeletons after his dad gave him a mouse skeleton when he was a wee child.
I mean, part of me understands this. I also really like bones. This is a weird thing. I just dug out my Halloween decorations, right? And in the Halloween box, there is a small box that is full of small animal bones, like mouse spines and mice femurs and that kind of thing that I bought from some random shop in Los Angeles that I've had for
the Skull
years.
Room or whatever.
No. It's like this really like gothy shop. I don't remember the name of it. But I like bones. I think that they're cool. I've got horns and taxidermy and cow skeletons and stuff in my house. I think that they're cool. So it sounds weird to say that he fell in love with skeletons, but I mean, I kind of get it a little bit.
I mean, what's weird is that he got it when he was 13. Somebody gave it to him, his dad. And then he just ran with that. Like, that was his personality. He's like, I'm Bones. I'm Jones Bones. John's Bonds from here.
John's Bones. That's who I am.
That's who I am. I'm John's Bones. You know, like, my parents gave me a plastic horse when I was 13. You know, I'm not out here living plastic horse life.
Fair.
I balanced out my personality a smidge. But I mean, good for him. Good for him. Because he's very successful. Nobody's written articles about me. They've written articles about him because I did research on that. And he runs a bone shop thing, I guess, a boneyard bone shop in also New York. And he promotes his wares on social media. And that is actually what got him some attention because one of his TikToks went viral because TikTokers, folks on the app, criticized a skull that he had on his website labeled Laplander, which is an offensive term for the Sami people, who are an indigenous group of Northern Europe. But there's no such thing as bad publicity in this day and age because this brought about the bone trade into the mainstream. Like, I remember even seeing stuff about this, kind of what sparked this episode today, in addition to Poltergeist.
On TikTok.
Yep. Hearing about it and learning about how often human bones are used and shit. And that's evidenced as well by the fact that there were so many articles about him. Like, something sparked all these articles being written, and it was his TikTok going viral. Now, John Bond claims he is providing a vital service. The bones he deals with are all above board, quote unquote, and they are leftover relics from that medical science boom, that medical field boom. He believes
in the 1800s and 1700s?
It was actually in the 1900s where a lot of this was happening too. Remember, they didn't outlaw until 1985.
Oh, okay.
So this is within the last generation or two, right? So he's saying that a lot of these medical bones are here in the United States and that he can just buy them and then resell them, believing that they can still serve humanity for education purposes, or either, as a collection item.
Okay.
And he's saying that he's also not only helping pass this knowledge along, but he's helping the families who are literally finding skeletons in the closets of their deceased loved ones who worked in the medical field. What are you going to do with them? Nobody knows. It's illegal to destroy human remains, and you can't donate them because a lot of institutions, they don't want blood on their hands. They don't want to have bones of people who are no identified, and they could be somebody who was murdered and sent over there. So they're just kind of like, what do I do with these human skeletons, these human remains? Well, luckily, John will come in and buy them, take them off your hands for a very reasonable price, and then he will move them to the next group who might need them.
That's what you do when there's an estate. You're like, I gotta sell this shit. I mean, shit, you and I went to a fucking estate sale, and we looked at the stuff online, and I made a fucking beeline for that skull cap because I'm a fucking weirdo.
But is this a human skull cap?
I don't know. I just liked the way it looked, and I put it in my oddities room, and I don't know. I really truly am. So I really can't point too many fingers here. But I mean, like I said, for an estate, you're like, what can I sell for profit? And so of course you're going to look for somebody who's going to take them. Because what are you going to do? Go out in the backyard and burn it? Legal or not, you're not going to burn something that could potentially make you money.
Oh, definitely not. And it is legal to sell it in the United States because you already have it, right? So if you're sitting on this thing that can make you $1,500, like, why wouldn't you sell it?
Yeah, totally.
And John, he really thinks that he's one of the good guys for all of those reasons. And Laura, can you read me a quote about his view of the bones that he brokers the sale of?
These pieces, these are human beings, and they should be treated with the utmost respect and dignity as possible. So within the context of the collection, we treat these pieces with honor, with dignity, with respect in terms of how we display them.
Those are very strong passion words, and that all sounds hunky-dory, but that's despite the fact that he has a wall of spines that are hung in 2 rows and like color coordinated from the darkest to the lightest in his waiting room area, his bone shop. It just feels like a little bit more like, oh, these are decor and not pieces of people who needed to be treated with respect and dignity.
So like curtains?
Yeah, they're hanging on rods, 2 rows of rods. Like one might display scarves from professional soccer teams or medals from races. There's like hung on 2 bars, just one on top of the other, with and they're literally arranged by color from darkest to palest.
I mean, but that's how you sell wares. But yeah, like you said, not with dignity and respect. They're not like laying on a bed of velvet in a beautiful hard box,
or just each on their own hanging, right? Like, why are they smushed together, organized by color? Just like it, because the pasty white ones are more desirable. So,
ooh, shocker.
Welcome to the world. And so it's just like really just comparing them for their quality and reducing them to that quality as opposed to, the people who they once held up.
Opposed to their Cabbage Patch Kid doll, adoption certificate.
It just... And it just sits wrong with me at times. And again, I'm high and mighty because I don't own any humans in the form of bones.
Apparently, I own several.
Potentially. We don't know. So there's a lot to unpack with this and a lot of emotions would come with it. And that's just the stuff that's happening above board, right? That is legal.
Oh, God. This is the above board?
Yes, because there's a black market. This past summer, so hot off the presses, charges were brought against the Harvard, not like Harvard Pennsylvania
school.
or something. Whatever. Harvard's morgue manager, he was arrested and charged with stealing human body parts and selling them to other people.
What kind of people?
Oh,
Like
all
randos?
kinds of weirdos. I don't know how he met them.
Jesus.
But the people he sold to were big fucking weirdos. And he would let these weirdos come into the morgue and like look at the dead people and like pick out what they wanted, if it was organs or skin or bones. Like it was a fucking flea market.
Weird.
And this included a woman named Katrina McLean, who purchases included 2 desiccated faces she bought for $600.
$600? That's $300 a face. Jesus Christ, I would like to think that mine was worth more than $300. Fucking God, that's depressing.
Depending to who. I'm sure it's more to your husband, but maybe less to a
Fuck
random.
you, Katrina. This is $1 million smile.
I bet the people who love those people would have paid more than money to keep their faces attached to their bodies.
Yeah.
It's a bummer. But she spent those $600 to buy those faces, according to the indictment, for her art that she sold under a business called Cat's Creepy Creations.
Fucking Etsy weirdo. But apparently not on Etsy because Etsy won't touch it. I don't know.
Well, yeah, she would sell them through Instagram and like at farmers markets.
Face at the farmer's market. It's so wholesome. You've made it so nasty.
You don't know. Nobody knows what they're selling. There could be human fat candles. Nobody knows. But in the fat, McLean shipped human skin to a man in Pennsylvania and engaged his services to tan the skin and create leather. It also mentions a payment from another buyer that had the memo head number 7 and a separate transaction for brains with a lot of eyes.
Oh, it's literally, quote, that was what the transaction, like the invoice said.
Yeah, I'm guessing this was on fucking Venmo or some shit. They were probably Venmoing this guy, and that's what they were putting in there. Yeah, humans, real people.
Okay, so are these bodies that came to Harvard for study, like donated to science, and then he's lopping parts off and selling them for personal profit? How does this work?
That's what I'm guessing. I didn't look too much into it, and there's not as much out there because, right, it's an ongoing like, stuff. But I'm guessing these were people who donated their body to science. And like, what do you think of donating your body to science? Who are you going to donate it to?
Oh, it's
Harvard,
above board,
right? I mean,
right? It's like the institution.
Yeah.
Oh, that's super fucking sad.
Yeah, I mean, that's what my guess is. Like, the other thought is that they were people who went to the Harvard hospital and died, right?
Indigent,
because there is a Harvard hospital.
Nobody to claim them.
Or no, even just then, they're just in the morgue. He's just selling them off. I don't know. Anyways, I didn't look into that, Laura. Thanks for calling
Bummer
that
index, because you didn't do it because you're like, you know what? I don't need to know more about this because it's fucking creepy and sad.
Yeah, that was why, and not because I was crunched for time.
Let's go with that.
So, having your bodies picked over like a flea market and being paid for with memos like head number 7 and brains, that's pretty far from the tasteful, honoring world that John's Bones described. I can't even say it.
Because you just want to put it in there. You're the writer. You're just like, make it happen.
I like rhyming. So, I mean, it does feel like a little bit of a cop-out. I mean, even in the John's Bones world of like saying, oh, these are medical specimens that I'm reselling. That feels like a cop-out to say that, because where do these bones come from, really? They all had a life before becoming medical props. They once belonged to people who had hopes and dreams and people who cared about them and people they cared about. So I wanted to take a second to talk about how these bones came to be. So where did they come from? Well, not a lot is known about these individuals, for the most part. That isn't recorded. And that's because they entered the market probably after they died.
Stripped of everything.
While we do... Yeah, no kidding. We do know a lot of them came from India, and that not long after they were buried, and I mean, even before the embers of their funeral pyre died, sometimes directly after their family leaving, they were pulled from their eternal resting place, because obviously the best bones come from the freshest bodies. and corpses were drug off to the bone factory. First, the corpses were wrapped in netting and anchored into the river, where bacteria and fish reduced a body from something that looked like a person to a loose pile of bones and mush.
Jesus, and this is India, so this is in the Ganges?
I mean, probably. Where else would it be? Yeah, let's go swim in those holy
waters that's full of shit and rotting human flesh. Jesus Christ.
Yum, 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 yum. Good soup. The bone factory's crew would then take the bones out of the water, and they kept them together the whole time because one biological set was more valuable than pieces of people.
And I mean, as they break down, they have to, like, I mean, the connective tissue is much, much harder in a week or so. I mean, I guess some of the parts would totally congeal. Water is very corrosive.
But even if it doesn't, when you bring the bones back, they scrub them and they boil them in a cauldron of water in caustic acid to dissolve any remaining flesh. And then, to bring them to that medical white, bones were then left in sunlight for a week before being soaked in hydrochloric acid.
That's interesting you talk about the yellow, because the bones that I have, the model, quote, I don't know. The spine that I have is very yellow, which is why I always assumed that it was a fake.
Nah, that's a human. That's just a poorly made human. It's probably a Russian.
But it's yellow, and I had always assumed because of that tint that it was, or it's old.
I think you should go bury that in your backyard tonight.
What if it's plastic? How fucking stupid am I going to feel when I die and I go to heaven? And they're like, yeah, you know that body that you buried? It was a fucking piece of plastic.
A, there's no heaven. B, I think that's going to rank real low on the list of universe mysteries that you want the answers to.
No, I'm just going to be like, it's so fucking stupid. I don't know. I'm going to take a picture of it and let the internet decide. Is it real? I don't know. Anyway.
Send it to Jones Bones.
Yeah.
But anyways, once they're stripped down to their bones and they're bleached and then they're wired together to make like the whole thingamajig, they begin their long journey. And as it goes, those who do the dirty work get the smallest cut. So the ones who are dealing with the human flesh in India, they make the least amount of money. It's like $40 a body or some shit.
And they're
like
doing
that.
such awful fucking work.
Yeah, well, welcome to the world.
Yeah.
And so the bone factory folks, the brokers who then sell the bones to the medical schools. And it's not always in America. I feel like a lot of these medical schools are in emerging economies. So places that are like becoming world powers, or not world powers,
or just getting more medical professionals. And so there's a
Yes.
greater desire.
So places that not that long ago didn't have as good of doctors, didn't have their own medical schools. They're now busting onto the scene. They're like, give us your bones.
That's what she said. Sorry. That's the cleverest joke I can come up with.
I appreciate it. While exporting, so while exporting these bones out of India is illegal, buying them on the flip side is not. In the U.S., we have no federal laws preventing owning, buying, or selling human remains unless the remains are Native American. And otherwise, you are able to sell or own human remains. It's dedicated by the individual state. And in the end of it, there's only 3 states that outlaw it. So, Laura, you are in the clear for your human bones that you own.
And that's the loophole, right, of a lot of different things is, it's not illegal to have it. It is that import or exporting. Yeah.
Well, it's not illegal in the U.S. to buy the bones. India made the law saying it's illegal to export it. But it is still legal in India to sell bones to other Indians. So So these bone brokers are there and they say they're legitimate businesses, but then they do all this other stuff hush hush behind the scenes. And I'll have Big Bone coming after me, so if you see me hanging in a medical school, you'll know what happened.
Come at me, bro. Big Bone. Oh, that sounds really naughty.
Actually, I would. That doesn't sound so bad.
You mean like a turkey leg bone? Because that's what I'm picturing. I want that.
Oh, that actually
I know. It sounds
nice
delicious.
Too.
Give me that turkey bone. Walking around the Ren Fair with a giant slab of turkey.
I mean, I will say that is different from the other kind of bone that everyone's thinking of, is because that one actually smells better than it tastes.
But I mean, okay, this is kind of a weird aside, but with bones, I completely understand John's bones and his like obsession with bones, because seriously, every time I finish like a meat with bone, I am like, I could boil this bone and like strip it down and save it. I never do it, but I think about it every fucking time. Yeah.
Oh yeah, because you need all those chicken
exactly,
femurs.
because I'm a fucking weirdo. Like, I don't know, there is something, I like
I'm
bones.
Save these
I know.
We're gonna see you on Hoarders someday.
When I was in high school and we dissected a rat or something, there was a tailbone, and I literally sat there for like the whole class period slicing gunk off of a rat tailbone and then put it in my pocket. Why? I don't know. Because I'm a fucking weirdo. I don't still have it. I don't know what happened to it.
Oh my god. Your fucking cat probably ate it. I don't know.
But I'm just saying, I'm a weirdo. I guess I get it. I don't know. I don't know what point I'm trying to make.
These are the questions you need to ask about before you start making a podcast with someone. Have you ever stripped the flesh from a rat tail and put it in your pocket? And there you have it, folks. This is the end of Impolite Society.
Right after we've started again.
I'm a weirdo, but I don't know if I'm that much of a weirdo. I'll never look at you the same.
You're welcome.
Be like, she's got a rat tail in her pocket. Is that a rat tail in your pocket, or are you just happy to be podcasting?
Both.
Oh, man. Well, if you ever find a rat tail, you know Laura's been there.
Like, I can carbon date
Claus,
it. Send me a picture. I'll tell you the species. No, I have no idea.
No, I just feel like you're like leaving them behind you. Like you're just constantly
like a breadcrumb trail.
You're just like, oh, Santa Claus has appeared. Santa Bone has appeared, and he's left a rat tail for me. Oh man, all this laughter around dead bodies.
I'm sorry.
No, but it does raise a lot of questions that we will not try to answer. But some of the big questions that popped into my head: when does a person stop becoming a person and become a pile of bones, right? So, like, obviously you can't own a person, but in this, like, as Laura said, you could own pieces of them or their whole bone structure.
Yeah. It's something to do with like when it ceases to have its own recognizable traits, right? Like when that flesh is all stripped down and you can no longer recognize it easily as Rachel, as Laura. That's when it literally depersonifies them. Depersonifies?
And in the
whatever. You know what I meant.
And in the book, it was talked about people who had skeletons who they then traced back to the person who they were, and it made the owners of the skeletons feel more squeamish about having them because they weren't a thing. They were a person. Yeah. They were somebody. And so like having that and not being able to separate it, it just creates a whole conundrum, right? Because it honestly goes back to necrophilia. Our very first Impolite Society episode is, when does a person become an object, right? That is not harmed by fucking it or hanging it up in your medical classroom.
Great question. Again, that we will not try to answer.
Yeah, exactly. That we'll save that. If we ever get to making a Patreon, it'll just be Laura and I pontificating for 5 hours. Being like, well, actually, I think that blah, blah, blah. Anyways, nobody wants to hear that. Obviously, we've come a long way from the 1800s, but I think it probably factored in there too, which is, what is the real motivator here? Is it so that you can learn and study and, see bones? I mean, I'm sure that's a part of it, but to me, given its deep roots in racism and scientific racism, plus maybe that, macabre taint tickle that some people seem to get from owning.
Did you just tell me that I had a taint tickle? Is that what just happened here?
A macabre taint tickle.
Oh, I'm sorry.
From owning these pieces of people, Laura, that my question is, does it become less about education and science and the beauty of the human body. You tell me.
So
Miss Human
again,
Owner.
I don't know if mine is fake or real. I assumed naturally that it was a fake. And the reason why I possessed it, because I do think it looks cool. I love the human body. I love anatomy. I love medicine. I like structures. I mean, I spent time cutting up dead bodies for mortuary science, and my main driver, which is probably why I left the study, was not to, preserve and give people dignity. It was because I was fucking fascinated by what was underneath them, which is probably maybe not a great way to go into that field. One of the many reasons why I may have left, but I truly do have an appreciation and a fascination with what goes on inside the human body. And so that's why we have it, is because I'm like, that's fucking cool to see how the articulation and how it works and how complex and cool it is. I don't know. I'll send a picture. I'll show it to you guys, and you guys vote. Tell me, is it real? Is it fake? I don't know.
Laura, if you had been born with the penis in the 1980s, you would be a serial killer. You're just like, I just want to see what's under people's flesh.
If they're dead already.
Give me access to dead bodies, and if you don't, I'll make my own.
No, I'm not going to make my own. I should have been a doctor. I should have been a pathologist. That's what I should have done. I should have studied dead people for a living.
Well, that wouldn't have left you very much time for podcasting, so
fair.
That's the way the cookie crumbles.
Fair.
Well, anyways, that is like a lot of big questions around a really messy topic that was frankly fascinating. And I would really encourage folks to read The Red Market, because it also questions just like the regular organ donations and all this crazy stuff. It's a lot to think about. But anyways, we're not in that kind of moral philosophizing podcast space anymore, so we're just going to tell you about bones and where they come from and how we turn them from people into things that John's Bones likes to hang on his wall and kiss at night. I'm
going to give some disclaimer, some little asterisk on that.
Unconfirmed. Yeah, sue me, Jones Bones. Come after me.
Come at me, bro.
Because there's no such thing as bad publicity. But okay, the real question here, and the most important question, is how can my bones be used in Hollywood? Can I donate my bones to Hollywood? Put me in the movie. That's the only way I'll ever be skinny enough to be on the feature films, is if when I'm reduced to my bones.
Or you could donate your body to that creepy guy who plasticizes bodies for the bodies. Do you know?
No, those are like executed Chinese people for real.
I thought people donated themselves to them.
No, that was Chinese. That was like a scandal. And I mean, like, I would not do that because he made 2 of those dead bodies have sex, and he cut them open so you could see what was happening on the inside of the human body while they were having sex. No, thank you.
Now I feel even creepier for really enjoying that fucking exhibit. Of course I did. I love the human body. I thought they were donated, like people who like willed. Oh, Jesus. Whole nother can of worms. You're right. I am a serial killer. Jesus Christ.
Just waiting to happen. If only you had more confidence.
And more penis.
Because that's what all serial killers have, is confidence.
Well, on that note.
It's like, I want to kill you and cut you open, but I want you to like me.
Well, on that note, thank you for listening to Impolite Society. That's it for this episode. Follow us on socials. Maybe we're doing posts. I don't know. Maybe if we feel like it.
Email. Make sure to tell your friends about us, because if you like learning about bone markets, it's spooky season. Who doesn't want to hear about bones and human bones and how we came to have
and
human
boning
bones?
Down.
So, or if you just have a friend who also wants to be a serial killer, let them know so that they can feel related to Laura and know that they're not alone in the world and that there is other outlets for their dark desires.
And most importantly, never forget, you fucking weirdos, stay curious and keep marching to the beat of your own drum. And I don't know the music yet, so I can't like I don't like have the melody down yet.